The following is a Podcast One Minnesota production.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, you betcha, yeah.
If it's made in Minnesota, who's making it and how?
Yeah, you got that right.
It's the makers of Minnesota, focusing on the products and services uniquely made in Minnesota, and conversations with the makers, entrepreneurs, and innovators in Minnesota about how they conceived of their products and how they brought them to market. With Stephanie Hansen, it's the makers of Minnesota.
Hi, this is Stephanie Hansen, and you're listening to The Makers of Minnesota, where we talk to people in Minnesota doing cool things. Thank you for listening to the podcast every week. We are on episode number 68, which seems amazing that we've talked to 68 very cool entrepreneurs doing cool things. This week, we are talking to co-founder and CEO of WholeMe Food Products, Mary, is it Kosier?
Kozer. Yep.
Mary, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Let's just talk for a second about WholeMe, because that's such an interesting name for a food product, because it kind of in some ways I'm like, when you just hear the name WholeMe, you think like vitamins or soap, or there's a million different things you can think of. How did you think of the name?
You know, I thought of the name, I would say about 5 years before I actually started the company.
Really?
And that was when I was just kind of tossing around this idea of gluten-free, grain-free snacks. And again, about a decade ago when there wasn't a lot going on in that space.
So are you gluten-free yourself, and is that why you came up with the need?
You know, I came up with the concept after my husband was diagnosed as an adult with type 1 diabetes.
Okay.
So this was about 10 years ago. He was just in his late 30s, and boom, all of a sudden he was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. So from one day to the next, insulin dependent. And as a family, we quickly had to kind of change how we ate just so that we could better manage those blood sugar levels.
How did you feel like you ate before the diagnosis?
You know, I think it's all relative. I think I thought I was eating pretty healthy.
Yep.
And what we became aware of very quickly was how many grams of sugar were in everything. And
it's
yikes.
The hidden sugars. It's
Yes.
not like you're just sitting there with a tablespoon at the sugar pot.
I mean, my kids were having what I thought was, you know, perfectly fine, healthy cereal for breakfast. But,
Yep.
you know, after we started reading the labels a little bit more closely, that wasn't the case.
And in the beginning, because I've done a radio show about food for, I think, 11 years. And in the beginning, gluten-free was really challenging. You know,
Right.
one of the questions people would ask us all the time are, you know, what are some gluten-free restaurants? And we would kind of recommend the vegetarian restaurants just because that was safe. Now, gluten-free is pretty ubiquitous.
Right.
So in the day when you started WholeMe, what was it that you felt like was missing from the marketplace, and where was the hole?
I mean, we were really looking to pull out preservatives from our food. And so what we did is we went through the pantry and started pulling out, you know, as I was looking into autoimmune disease as well and looking at things that would be good for a type 1 diabetic, but also good for, you know, an autoimmune disease in general, we were looking for things that would not cause any inflammation in the body, which meant pulling out grains and glutens. And so we were looking for substitutes for flours and sugars. And, you know, I started relying heavily on nuts and seeds.
Right.
And that kind of led to, you know, some creative time in the kitchen, which led to the creation of what ultimately was WholeMe, which were these refrigerated bars that I created in my kitchen, and then some replacements for cereals so that my kids, at the same time as my husband was going through this, I wasn't cooking multiple meals. We were all eating the same food.
Right.
And I just wanted it to taste great, but yet not have a lot of chemicals in it.
So you're cooking like this for your family. And at what point do you realize, like, what were you doing business-wise at that time? Were you in business or were you a stay-at-home mom?
No, I spent 21 years at the University of Minnesota.
Okay.
So I was fully employed. I was
Yep.
at the Carlson School of Management. I was an administrator there. And, you know, I was just chugging along with my career, had no intention of being an entrepreneur.
So you're making these products at home, and do you remember, like, what it was that tripped your trigger to make it a business?
Well, what happened was I was starting to bring in some of what I was creating in the kitchen into my gym on the weekends. And I was a member of a small gym here in St. Paul. And so I'd bring some of my bars and some of my cereal into the gym, and people were like, wow, this is really good. or this is not so good.
Right.
And I would go back home and I would try something else. And the next weekend, I'd have something different for everybody to try. And the owner of the gym was like, wow, I think you're onto something here. Could you bring some more of those bars in? Because I'm doing this event next week. And I said, sure. You pay for my ingredients. I'll bring them in. And so that's sort of how it got started, you know. And he was the owner of the gym would kind of bring my bars in for events. And people were like, wow, if these were in the grocery store, I'd buy them.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, interesting.
So how much, or I read that you started a Kickstarter to get started. So tell me about that.
We did. That was about 5 years ago or so. We really wanted to see if there was something to our idea.
Were you in grocery at the time you did the Kickstarter?
We were just getting started. We weren't, I think we were maybe in 3 retail shops and in a handful of CrossFit gyms. And that was it.
At what point, like, how much money, do you remember how much money you, like, set aside and you were like, this is the money I'm going to use to start my small business?
I was not quite that disciplined.
Okay, so let's just go back to the time where you're spending money. You've spent money maybe on graphic design. You've spent money on packaging.
Yes.
And you're not really sure because you're just sort of paying as you go. Do you remember feeling like, wow, I don't even know how much I've spent. I need to get like more serious about this. Do you remember that day?
Absolutely. I mean, I think when I started, you know, early on, I thought of the name WholeMe. I thought there was something to this concept. I actually spent some time fleshing out a business plan, hired a consultant to kind of help me with some renderings and some basic information. And then I kind of sat back and I thought, that's a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
I have a full-time job and I'm not sure if I want to do this.
I understand.
And that's when I started thinking, well, maybe I don't have to do it alone. Maybe I can find someone to partner with. And actually, that's what I did, is I found a woman who is my co-founder now, Krista Steinbach. And I really felt like, you know, I can bring something to this business if we're to really make a go of it. But I'm sort of an accidental entrepreneur, and I'm also not a foodie at heart. I kind of just started experimenting out of necessity. And maybe if I could find somebody who was a foodie, that would be a good mix.
How did you meet Krista?
Again, I met her at my gym.
Wow.
So I had gotten to know her husband, and I knew that he and his wife were alum of the Carlson School, which is where I was working. So I kind of made the connection, and Krista at the time owned a small bake shop in town that made kind of specialty cupcakes and macaroons. So actually, I got to know her. I had known her for a while in that business, and then she had left that, and she was the pastry chef for Bachelor Farmer. And so when I approached her with this idea of WholeMe, she was actually at the Bachelor Farmer.
Right.
And that was, we actually just are celebrating our 5 years as business partners this month.
When you decided to get a business partner and you sit down and you talk to her, were there qualities that you were looking for that, like, what was it about her in particular?
With her, I was looking for somebody who knew the ins and outs of food, who also could be kind of an innovator for WholeMe, who could bring the idea behind the concept that I had to life and be kind of the innovation and the food brainchild behind it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in retrospect, there are a whole lot of skills I could have been looking for, but I was really looking for somebody who knew food.
It's kind of funny. That's why I'm kind of poking at this a little bit, because I find it funny that the skill sets that you reached out for were in the product, taste, food development side.
Yeah.
When you already had a product per se.
Right. I did. And I thought, well, you know, I think she could bring this to a whole new level.
Yeah. That's interesting.
And she did.
Yeah,
she
of course.
did actually. And so that's what's kind of unique about it. And I knew she had a nice solid business background.
Yeah.
Which is also what I was looking for. And she'd been in and out of a couple of other small businesses, which I had never done before. So.
And being a member of the Carlson School in the faculty side of it, in the admin side, were you able to access the resources? That's a very strong school for entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I would say probably one of my biggest assets is my network and my, relationships, within the business community, the nonprofit community, the extended, entrepreneurial community. So I was able to really bring that, I think, to the forefront and, knowing how to quickly kind of access different people for different kinds of conversations depending on what we needed. And so to this day, that continues to be really probably one of my biggest strengths.
So you did the Kickstarter right around the same time that you met Krista? And
Shortly
partnered
after
with
I
her?
met Krista and we decided to make a go of it, I would say about 6 months later, we were doing our Kickstarter.
And you raised a lot of money. You guys raised $40,000. That
Yeah.
seems like a lot of money to me.
Yeah, it was quite a bit of money. I mean, we were really, at that point in time, we were, like I said, we had a handful of accounts, but, and we were renting kitchen space out of a commercial kitchen on an hourly basis. And we were hoping to be able to invest in some semi-automated labeling machine and some new packaging as we were sort of getting ready to scale, and which is exactly what we did with the money.
And you went from originally doing kind of bars and grain cereals to what you have now, which are clusters, not bars at all. Why did you make the switch in the type of delivery?
Right. Well, about a little over a year ago, as we were thinking about kind of what's next for the company and looking to scale a little bit more aggressively than we had been, we were looking at our bars, and we had these 2 grain-free bars that were they are amazingly delicious. They do have egg in them. They're kind of like a cake-like bar.
Yeah.
And so they required refrigeration. And at this point in time, we were really one of the only players in the refrigerated bar space. But people would take a bar, throw it in their workout bag, forget about it. And the unfortunate thing about a really fresh product like that is if you forget about it, unlike some of the bars that are on the marketplace that, 6 months later look and taste the same, this one grows mold. And so we thought, wow, it's kind of a costly proposition to do all of the educating necessary to not only the buyers in the stores, but also to our consumers on how to keep this bar fresh. And
you
as
don't
we
want
were
to be doing the missionary work on a brand new category.
Yeah, we just simply
necessarily
didn't
as a small
have
business.
the capital to be able to do that. So I tell people, we still have a lot of fans who are like, when are you going to bring those bars back? And I think, they're kind of like Disney, that we put them in the vault. And hopefully, as we're better, in a more strategically strong position when it comes to cash flow and capital, we could reintroduce them. Because now, actually, if you look at the marketplace, people have started to establish that refrigerated bar category.
Yeah, and there's like refrigeration for the flaxseed oils and some of that kind of up front by the registers.
Kombucha and Perfect bars and all Wella bars. And, we wouldn't be the first player, which also helps a little bit given our size.
I was wondering, too, like the bar space seems so competitive because there were just so many, not in the refrigerated section necessarily, but is there less competition as a cluster or because you're in the granola section of the store?
So, yeah, right now we actually, I would say about 80% of our distribution is in the granola section, but our product is still pretty unique because it's a pretty dense cookie-like cluster. So it's soft and you can either, you can put milk on it, you can eat it by itself straight from the bag, almost like a bar, or you can put it on a smoothie or a yogurt bowl or whatever. So we're pretty unique in that space, but we're also starting to get increased distribution in the Better For You snack set. And so I think in both of those places, our product plays really well.
Have you quit your job?
Yes.
And when did you quit?
I quit my job a year ago, July, so about 18 months ago.
And did you get to, how did you make that decision? Because I think that's a decision that a lot of small business entrepreneurs, it's like one of the hardest decisions that they make.
It was really difficult. And again, I'm middle-aged woman, and I had really established what I think was a great career in higher education. I left as dean of the undergraduate program at the Carlson School, which some people would say, why would you ever leave a job like that? And I thought, well, you know what? I had held that job for about 10 years. I had built a great network. I was really proud of what I had done. And I was truly ready for kind of the next step in my career. I also had a mentor at the time who had been helping me think through WholeMe and its launch. And I remember, very specifically when she said to me, Mary, if you're going to give this your all, you can't do it part-time. You cannot be a part-time entrepreneur and be successful.
We've talked about that with other folks on the show, that there's really a reckoning of kind of your hobby business and then you're deciding to go all in and make it your business. So you have a family, I'm assuming.
I do, yes.
And so do you go home to your family and say we're going to go down to one income? What is this going to look like? I mean, practically, did you know okay, this is how much money I can make and this is how long it's going to take me? Was money a consideration, or did you have enough cushion from your partner?
Mm-hmm. You know what? It's been a consideration all along the road. It's actually much more difficult than I anticipated it being. I also think, I'm at an age where I'm in probably the highest or some of the highest earning potential of my career. And I've left that behind to be, part of this emerging brand. And it's a struggle. My husband, before I quit my job, my husband took about a year and a half out of his job, and he was kind of a freelance consultant in healthcare, but spent it helping WholeMe. And as we were planning my transition, which was a little bit longer just because of my duration at the university, I didn't want to do it, 2 weeks notice.
Yep.
There was quite a bit of transition and planning to make sure it was thoughtful, and so we spent, we've been on one income basically for about 3 years now. And it's a continual challenge. I have a daughter who's a sophomore in college, a son who's a sophomore in high school. And so we're really, pinching pennies like we've never done before in our
I can
life.
Completely appreciate where you're coming from on that. And that's why I'm, again, just poking at that, because it's one thing to have a business and to do it sort of after hours and your family's invested. It's another thing to completely take your income and move that off the table and then still ask your family to do all the heavy lifting that it takes to support you and, weekends and nights and packaging or whatever it is that you end up doing. And it's stressful. It's super stressful.
It's really stressful. I would definitely say that it's been, fortunate for us, my husband and I, we have to be in constant communication on our own cash flow, not to mention the businesses. But with college tuition and high school happening and the juggling that it requires right now in our family, it's significant. It's very significant.
A lot of people, when they're working through their business challenges, they're able to ride that wave. It sounds like, do you have a sense of where you need to get so that the pressure won't be so consistent?
Yeah. I'm cautiously optimistic that we've got, we're not a cash flow positive business yet. Mm-hmm. And so as we kind of work through our challenges over the coming year, I think by the end of 2018, we're going to be much better positioned to really kind of hit 2019 and 2020 with a little bit more relief.
A lot of people underestimate that that takes more time than they thought.
Right.
So every business owner I've talked to quit their job maybe 6 months to a year too early. Mm-hmm. And yet at the same time, it's never early enough because you have to take the leap and launch. Are you, if you were giving words of advice, would you say you left too early? Would you have planned differently?
I don't think I left too early. I think, and I don't regret when I left. I really do believe that the business needed me to move forward. Sure. On the other hand, I think my husband and I weren't fully prepared for how long this
and how
transition would be till you can really get any sort of meaningful salary.
Yeah.
So it's a long road, and we're not there by any shape or form. And so we could have tightened our belt sooner.
Yep.
And we didn't.
Good advice for people that are listening. When you look into 2018, 2019, 2020, you're obviously super motivated. Where do you think you need to take this product? Is it getting increased distribution? Is it getting distribution in other non-traditional areas?
Yeah, we've experienced, I would say we've really been selling WholeMe, and specifically our cluster line in earnest for the last 3 years. We've had 3 consistent years of 2x growth.
Mm-hmm. That's great.
We just hit our first, we're just going to be over $1 million this year, which is really exciting.
That is exciting.
It's a benchmark that a lot of companies don't make it to.
That's right.
Doesn't mean we're profitable, like I said before, which a lot of people assume, like, you're selling that much, you must be profitable. Oh, no, we're actually not.
And I bet your ingredients are pretty costly.
Well, and that's the biggest piece, is that we're a nut and seed-based company, and we're committed to
being dates, too, right?
Yeah, and so it's real. They're clean products. We're non-GMO project verified, so the source of our ingredients matter. And so our cost of goods are relatively high.
Yeah.
If we were using a lot of oats or, sugars and flours, it's, the cost of goods can go down dramatically. Yeah. So that is, a choice that we made going into this business, and we're still very committed to that. So what we really need to see happen over the next, I would say, 18 months is we need to continue to scale our business. We've got a really nice baseline of stores, just about 2,000 or so across the country. We do a great business in the natural and specialty food space, so the Whole Foods of the world, Kowalski's, Lens Byerly's. And we need to keep building that base of business. We need to keep, making sure that our velocities on the shelf are fast, but we also need to start getting some other additional accounts. There are other kind of natural and specialty retailers that we're targeting for 2018 that will hopefully continue to build that base of business that we have.
I would assume that you're not making the product anymore, that you're at a co-packer. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. We made that transition about, 2 years ago in January.
Do you miss making the product?
No.
I knew you were going to say no, but I
remember those
ask.
hairnets and, running off. And
yeah, you don't miss it.
Oh, my.
In a day-to-day, like tomorrow when you get up and you sit at your work desk, what do you do every day? Like, do you call on accounts? Do you have a distributor that you manage the sales efforts that way? Like, literally, what do you do on a day-to-day basis?
Well, my co-founder, Krista, and I have sort of divvied up a lot of the day-to-day kind of based on our skill sets.
Sure.
And so Krista manages operations, product innovation, and day-to-day financials for the business. I really focus on, I'm basically, for lack of another word, I'm the VP of sales.
Yep.
I'm working on marketing, all of our promotions.
You do a lot of sampling?
Do a lot of sampling and demos. We've got a nice little ambassador program, actually, that works well for us, where we've got, fans in the community out doing demos on our behalf. We've also got a small board of directors and a group of shareholders. And so I sort of manage a lot of the external relations for the company.
And so on a day-to-day basis, do you like pick up the phone and decide like, I'm going to call Lens & Byerly's today?
Yeah. I mean, right tomorrow, for example, I'm getting ready to go to a small trade show in Las Vegas next week. And so I'm getting all the samples and everything ready to ship to my hotel. So I'm ready for that show in Vegas.
Yep.
And then I go straight from Vegas to another potential customer call who I'm calling on for the second time in Chicago. And so for me, sales is a lot of what I'm doing. And so I'm managing both with customers, but also we use brokers. And, usually they'll be setting up the appointments on our behalf. And depending on the broker and the meeting, I'll be there or not.
Have you, I say this to be funny, but honestly, I've never worked so hard as I have at trade shows. Are they the most just exhausting part of your business?
So exhausting. I'm hoping this, I've never been to this one. It's a kind of a specific trade show that I'm going to for a customer in Las Vegas. So I don't think it's going to be quite like some of the typical ones, but Expo West every year, which is this huge natural products show in Anaheim every year, it's the hardest I ever work. And there's fancy food shows in January and June. They are grueling. I never thought they'd be.
No,
and
you're on your feet for, 9 hours a day, and plus you're set up. And I would have different pairs of shoes hidden underneath the booth, just standing on those concrete floors. And
it's a grind.
Yeah.
They are difficult. And depending on who's walking by, you're also kind of trying to see who's who and are there buyers going by that I need to be a little bit more excited about.
Yeah, and then there's the
days are
looky-loos with their name tags and you can't quite see their names. And,
or they're turned over
and the people that just want the free samples.
Oh,
so
yes.
you got to weed through those people.
Yes.
And then the buyer that you're talking to, we call a freeloader Freddy. So freeloader Freddy comes by and you see the buyer you need to talk to and you can't get away fast enough. And I remember those days.
I mean, we've gotten a little bit better at making sure they're staffed appropriately, and we might even bring an ambassador or two just because you need breaks.
Yeah, for sure.
They're really intense.
When you think about marketing, do you spend a lot of money on marketing, or?
We spend very little money on marketing. Right now, I have a part-time kind of social media coordinator that works for us. And she actually isn't even here in Minnesota. She's in North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And so does it remotely for us. And she manages kind of our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, just starting to get out on Pinterest. And that's been great. And, you know, she found us through kind of grassroots. She used to live here, loved our product. We had coffee a couple of times. And I was like, I just like you and your style. So she's come on board and organically grown, you know, our social media following to what is really amazing given the fact that we have no budget.
Right.
And so what we've built, we've done organically.
Good for you.
Yeah.
It gets harder and harder to do
that.
It
does, because a lot of people won't talk about your product for free.
Yeah.
They want some sort of payment beyond product. And for a company our size, that's pretty difficult right now still.
Yeah. You have a unique opportunity in the gym space, because that's not something every food product can go in. Do you focus on that space?
You know, I think we could focus on it a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
We're in a handful of CrossFit gyms. There's a local boutique studio called Alchemy.
Yep.
We're in all of those studios, and we're in a handful of kind of yoga studios.
Sure.
So our product does lend itself really well to that. We haven't quite figured out a strategic way to mobilize kind of a sales force to get into that more boutique side of gyms. But it's something that's kind of top of mind, and we continue to get into the low-hanging fruit, at least here in the Twin Cities market, for sure.
Do you listen to podcasts or read business books, or how do you continue your education in having come from the Carlson School?
Right. You know, I'm always looking for good books to read.
Are there any that
Tim
stand out
Ferriss
for you?
is a favorite of mine. I look to him a lot. We also follow Traction.
Mm-hmm.
And so
do you want to explain that to people that maybe don't know what it is?
Yeah, Traction, it's this EOS system, which stands for Entrepreneurial Operating System, which is a very sort of tactical way to approach business from as a startup. You know, you're starting from small and you're growing and you're trying to understand the different roles and responsibilities, and folks are sometimes wearing many hats, and it gives you a language and a way to really strategically attack your business when you might not have the resources to, you know, handle it any other way. So for us, you know, it gives you templates that you can build upon to create kind of who you are, your mission, your goals, your marketing objectives, and it's been really helpful for us.
And it's a program that you sort of read the book and then you follow the independent disciplines, and it's a reporting system, right?
Right, it is. And there are consultants that I wish we could hire to help us, you know, and guide us through, you know, a quarterly retreat. Right now, you know, we do that ourselves.
And so you create the milestones, let's just say the big rocks,
right?
What
rocks.
are the goals?
Yeah.
And then you have the little rocks that support the big rocks and the activities. How often do you think, as an entrepreneur that's doing that system on your own, do you visit the big rocks? Or is it every day? Like, are you really conscientious about, like, every day checking into that system?
You know, it's directly related to what's on fire in the business.
I understand.
And lately, cash flow's been on fire.
Yep.
And so when we're really worried about how we're going to manage through Q1 2018, some of those rocks aren't as important anymore
because you're just trying to keep the lights on.
I might not be able to pay this bill.
Yep.
Or, that co-packer, yikes.
Yep.
You know, so it's, and at its essence, we should be more disciplined about that, but sometimes it's really hard.
I totally get it. What do you do to relieve stress?
I
Just
work out
in your
a lot.
personal life, do you?
I do.
What kind of workouts
Thank
do you
goodness.
like?
So my neighbor Lisa is a trainer and a choreographer, a dancer.
Sure.
And they built this amazing little workout studio above their garage, and they happen to live 2 houses down from me.
Wow. So
And
like
so,
a neighborhood exercise
seriously,
group.
4 or 5 days a week, you're going to find me in her garage, and we're going to be just doing circuits or old school step aerobics, and we have a really good time.
That sounds
and
hilarious.
Thank goodness, because it keeps me, I feel like it's my therapy.
Yeah, absolutely. And just are there other makers that you collaborate with or other makers you admire that you want to share?
Actually, that's a great question. So one of the things that's been a tremendous help to me as a food entrepreneur is, and I don't know if you've talked to her or not, but there's a group that's actually part of the Home Center at the Carlson School of Management. It's called Grow North, and it's a relatively new arm of the Home Center for Entrepreneurship. It's run by Lauren Prodhan. And she is amazing. You should have her on your podcast.
Okay.
But she's created this means for food entrepreneurs in the Twin Cities community to come together and network in really meaningful ways. For example, she invited me and a small group of, I think there are 9 of us in the Twin Cities. We come together monthly as part of this pilot program for the CEO Roundtable, where we're all from food businesses. We come together for a moderated discussion for 4 hours once a month, which is a huge commitment.
Mm-hmm.
4 hours doesn't sound like a lot, but for us to come together on the same day every month for 4 hours is nothing short of impossible. But we had to all commit to this up front. Lauren found funding for this, and we're able to really basically kind of open up the engines of our businesses and share in confidence with each other what's going on, and really use the group as consultants to help us solve problems.
You're lucky to have that sort of a resource.
Oh my gosh, I feel really fortunate. And the friendships and the trust, I think, in the group is unlike anything I've ever been a part of.
It's pretty neat, it sounds like. We've been talking with Mary, say it again, Kosier? No. Koser, sorry, I knew I was going to do it wrong. From WholeMe, and WholeMe are clusters of nuts and dates and goodness that are in like a granola type package. You have, is it 4 flavors now?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. And you want to give us your 4 flavors?
Sure. Yeah. We've got 4 flavors. Almond coconut was our original flavor. We've got lemon berry chia, which is a little bit like a lemon poppy seed muffin in a bag. Really delicious. Cinnamon banana chip, which is very cinnamon forward. Tastes a little nice and wintry.
Mm-hmm.
And then our latest was a salted peanut chocolate.
And what's your best seller?
Good. Our number 1 seller is almond coconut.
Okay.
And salted peanut chocolate, which is our latest SKU, is quickly taking market share.
Isn't that funny? Because that's your latest one.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for being on the Makers Podcast, and good luck.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.